At 10:43 p.m., my screen blinked with a line from my mother. "We've decided you're out of the family." A minute later, my sister liked it. Like approving a charge. I didn't pace. I didn't plead. Clarity snapped on like a ledger light. For years, I'd been the silent investor in their version of love. Tonight, the audit began. I opened my laptop and signed into every shared thing with a steadiness I could taste. No speeches. No ceremony. Accounts are either active or closed. I moved the cursor, selected their names, and ended the plan. Have you ever been treated like a reusable card? Tell me your story. I watched the clock turn past midnight and felt nothing but clarity. I moved through my accounts like a locksmith who finally owns the building. Family plan. Remove lines. Confirm. Two-factor code. Approve. Their phones would go quiet in a minute. The way a room goes quiet when the lights cut. Cloud albums next. Years of photos they weaponized as proof of love. Revoke access. Generate a new master key. Save. Streaming services had become peace offerings I paid for to keep the criticism down. End plan. No. They cannot transfer ownership. Close. Health insurance add-ons they insisted were temporary. Terminate dependence. Reconcile the premium. It felt less like revenge and more like maintenance. Like taking out the trash after a long party you never wanted. Bank alerts. I had built them years ago to keep an eye on overdrafts. I always covered. Disable forwarding. New email rules. My compassion had been a luxury they overdrafted for years. Tonight, the account went back to zero. Their rent. The autopay tied to me. Set up during one of those emergencies that never ended. Pause. Then cancel. The confirmation popped up like a final receipt. I read it once and clicked yes. Clean arithmetic. If you do not value what I give, you do not get it again. Every click was a boundary written in code. Change security questions. Rotate passwords. Kill old recovery numbers. I knew exactly how their guilt would arrive. Because I had built every doorway they used to reach me. Not tonight. Tonight, I bricked those doors and poured the foundation. My phone buzzed on the edge of the desk. An unknown number. Then another. I turned it face down. They were not shocked by what they had done. They were shocked I had stopped playing along. I kept moving. I opened the shared calendar my mother used to assign me favors disguised as family events. Remove permissions. Archive it all. The squares went blank and it felt like air entering a sealed room. I checked on Sophie. Her breathing was slow and even. Hair stuck to her forehead in a thin curl. The hallway nightlight painted a soft circle on the floor. I stood there a moment and measured the cost. Every compromise. Every yes. Had been a tax collected from her childhood. No more collections. I went back to the glow of the screen. Next came the delivery accounts they used to send packages to my address because theirs was too complicated. Delete cards. Delete saved addresses. Delete the story where I was the convenient solution. I cleared the browser cache like it could clear the past. Unknown number again. Then the message previews started stacking. Call us. This is serious. You have made a mess. I did not answer a single one. I opened a fresh spreadsheet and named it Truth. I listed what I had paid, what I had ignored, what I had forgiven. Property taxes I covered, when they were a week from penalty. 3 years of rent for my sister while she was finding herself on camera. Groceries. Co-pays. Flights. I totaled it out loud. Just to hear the number leave my mouth. More than $40,000. Saying it made it real. Seeing it made it final. I set an alert for myself at 12:03. The phone chimed right on time. Lines disconnected. Access revoked. Autopay canceled. Systems updated. I rubbed my eyes and tried to summon regret. There was only lightness. This was not a breakdown. This was a ledger coming clean. I closed the laptop and let the room go dark. Somewhere across town. A screen would flash signed out. That was the echo of a door I finally locked. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't scare me. It sounded like control. For years, I thought peace was something you earned by keeping everyone else comfortable. But peace bought on guilt is just another kind of debt. I learned that the hard way. When Sophie was born, I told myself I'd give her the family I never had. That meant answering every late-night call from my mother. Every plea that started with just this once. I paid their property taxes when they were weeks from foreclosure. I covered Megan's rent while she built her influencer career. 3 years. $1,200 a month. Every invoice labeled love. They said things like, asterisk, we raised you better than this. Asterisk, and I believed it meant times be generous. Asterisk. It actually meant times be obedient. I remember the day Sophie cracked her molar. The dentist said she'd need a procedure soon. Maybe $2,000 if it got worse. I had the savings ready, finally, something done right. Then Megan called crying about eviction. Mom added her voice to the chorus times, you're the only one who can fix this. Asterisk. I drained Sophie's fund that afternoon. Mom called me our hero. Sophie got antibiotics instead of surgery. Looking back, I see the pattern clearly now. Love, in our house, was a loan. Interest, accrued as expectation. Every favor added another line to a debt that could never be repaid. The thing about being raised in control is you mistake it for care. When you grow up walking on glass, silence feels safe. Even when it's slicing your feet. That's what they don't tell you about survival. It doesn't feel brave. It feels normal. That's the invisible chain of the survivor. You start believing the cage is your contribution. You call it loyalty. You call it family. You keep paying to keep the peace. Even when the cost is your self-respect. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's a contract signed in fear. I used to rationalize everything. Dad's temper, just stress. Mom's guilt trips, just worry. Megan's laziness, just pressure. I built excuses like a wall to hide behind. Because if they were cruel on purpose, then I'd have to admit I stayed by choice. I know better now. Staying was never a choice. It was programming. Every insult followed by a kiss on the cheek. Every we love you packaged. With a reminder of what I owed. They trained me to think saying no was betrayal. I remember the first time I said no. It was a tiny thing. Mom asked me to sign a store credit card in my name so she could get points. I said, I can't do that. Mom, it's not smart. Her face didn't fall, it hardened. She whispered, after everything we've done for you, that's how every request started to sound. A question with a loaded gun behind it. That night, after the text that ended, everything, I realized I'd been fired from a job I never applied for. Family accountant. Emotional janitor. Personal ATM. And the best part, they didn't even know I'd already quit. So when people ask if I regret cutting them off, I tell them this. You can't regret ending a scam. You can only regret how long you kept funding it. Peace isn't what you buy when the noise stops. Peace is the refund you collect when you finally cancel the contract. And that's exactly what I did. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating across the nightstand. Unknown number. Then another. Then a flood of notifications, voicemails, DMs. Even a Facebook tag. I didn't need to open them to know who it was. My family had gone public. Angela posted first. Asterisk. Some people forget who raised them. Asterisk. She wrote. Followed by a photo from 10 years ago, me at a barbecue. Laughing. Her hand on my shoulder like a trophy. I stared at it for a long second. The comments piled up fast times. You're such a strong mom. Asterisk. Asterisk. Kids today have no loyalty. Asterisk. I could almost hear her voice reading them out loud to Dad. Soaking in the pity. Then came the messages. Megan, you're overreacting. Mom didn't mean it that way. David. Times. We need to talk about what you've done. You've created a mess. Asterisk. Each one colder than the last. Calculated to make me doubt myself. I didn't reply. I took screenshots instead. Each one labeled and saved to a new folder times proof. Asterisk. It felt like preparing evidence. Not revenge. I knew how this worked. They'd try to rewrite the story before the ink dried. This time, I'd have receipts. By noon, my phone buzzed again. A text from a relative I hadn't heard from in years' times. Your mom is really hurt. Maybe you should call her before it's too late. Asterisk. Too late for what? Another guilt trip. Another apology that came with terms and conditions. I muted every chat. Silence. Beautiful. Heavy silence. That night, I sat on the couch scrolling through the storm they'd started. My mother's followers shared her post, calling me ungrateful. Megan added fuel with a video about toxic people who abandon family when money dries up. I laughed an actual laugh. Sharp and short. They were building their defense in real time. Turning abuse into performance. I wasn't angry anymore. I was studying. Every caption. Every lie. Every manipulation. It was data. Evidence. And data has one rule when analyzed properly. It tells the truth. I opened a new document and started outlining everything chronologically texts. Bank transfers. Receipts. Patterns emerged. Clean as code. My mother had always called me the logical one. She just never expected logic to be used against her. By midnight, I had a case file thick enough to hold up in court. I closed the laptop and looked at Sophie sleeping on the couch. Her sketchbook opened to a drawing of two stick figures, holding hands under a blue roof. Us? I thought of my parents' house. My old room turned into Megan's closet. My childhood boxed and sold at yard sales. They sat there now. Angry. Broke. Still pretending they were the victims. It almost felt like symmetry. The next morning, I called Julia. She answered on the second ring. Voice steady and warm. Hey. Stranger. You okay? I'm done being quiet. I said, I need a lawyer. She didn't ask for details. She just said, come by the office at 9. Bring everything. By 9:05, I was there, folder under my arm. Pulse steady. Not nervous. Just ready. Julia skimmed through the documents. Her brows lifting slightly. You've got more evidence than half my clients after discovery. I work in cybersecurity. I said, I know how to keep records. She nodded once. Impressed. We'll start with a formal repayment notice. 30 days to comply or face legal action. It's calm. Factual. And lethal. You okay with that? Yes. I said, send it today. Julia leaned back. Studying me. Once you start this, there's no going back. I met her eyes. They already made sure of that. The printer whirred behind her, spitting out the first page of justice. I watched the ink dry. Crisp and black. Sealing years of silence into something solid. 2 days later, Julia called again. Her voice carried that edge of disbelief lawyers get when truth outpaces cynicism. Lena, she said, we found something. I sat up straighter. What kind of something? An inheritance withdrawal. She said slowly. $40,000. Your name's on the signature line, but the handwriting doesn't match. The words hit like static in my ear. You're saying they forged me. Looks that way. We'll verify it. But it's strong evidence of fraud. I didn't speak for a moment. I stared at the wall and thought about all the times Mom had called asking for temporary access to my account just for a transfer. My stomach went cold. Julia's voice softened. You did the right thing. Lena. Now we can protect you properly. I ended the call and just sat there. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I was clear. They hadn't just taken my money, they'd taken my name. Control. That's all it ever was. Money was just the leash. Take the leash away. And they'd have to face what they really were. Powerless. That's the illusion of the empty wallet, the belief that whoever controls the cash controls the love. They used money as a language, and I was finally fluent enough to stop speaking it. I opened my laptop again and updated the folder name from Times Proof Times to Times Case. Asterisk. Then I saved it to a drive labeled Times Freedom. The next step wasn't about revenge. It was about correction. They'd forged my name to steal my inheritance. Now, I would sign it back. One legal line at a time. Eviction day came wrapped in sunshine. A perfect, cruel kind of brightness that made the world look too clean for what was about to happen. The sheriff's car idled by the curb, lights off, but authority humming in the air. I stood across the street, hands steady at my sides. Sophie's small fingers curled around mine. She wore her favorite denim jacket, the one she painted tiny lavender petals on last week. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The front door opened. My mother stepped out first. Her face blotched red from tears that looked fresh but felt rehearsed. She dragged a suitcase that scraped against the concrete like it resented her. My father followed. Slower. Arms crossed, as if the stance alone could still intimidate me. Lena. Mum snapped. Her voice cracking between fury and humiliation. You can't be serious. I looked at her. At the house behind her, the one she used to brag about. The one I now legally owned. I'm completely serious. Her jaw trembled. We're your family. You're throwing us out like garbage. I almost laughed. I was garbage when you needed someone to blame. When you needed rent money? When Sophie needed peace and you gave her chaos? Dad took a step forward. Voice booming like it used to when I was a kid. You think money gives you power. You've become arrogant. No. I said quietly. I just learned math. He blinked. Thrown off. What? I learned that one daughter paying for two parents. One sister. And one fantasy of family adds up to bankruptcy. Emotional and financial. He looked ready to yell again. But Sophie tugged my hand and whispered. Mom. I could feel her pulse through her palm. Fast but brave. I stepped closer to them. You forged my name. I said. You stole from me. You hurt me in front of my daughter. And now, you're asking for sympathy. Mom's tears broke for real this time. Please. Lena. Do something for your sister. She's lost everything. I already did. I said, handing her the envelope. Eviction notice inside. 30 days past due. That's something. She stared at it. Uncomprehending. You can't. I can. And I did. Her voice turned sharp again. You'll regret this. No. I said, I regretted letting it go on this long. Dad's shoulders sank. Mom's lips parted. Ready to hurl one last insult. But nothing came. The sheriff walked over. Polite but firm. Ma'am. Sire. It's time. They moved past me. Not looking up. Two people stripped of control. Dragging bags full of things that wouldn't matter anymore. Sophie squeezed my hand. Mom. She said softly. They look small. They always were. I said. We turned and walked toward the car. Behind us. The house was quiet. No yelling. No demands. No guilt echoing in the walls. Just air, and sunlight and space that finally belonged to me. On the drive home, Sophie leaned her head on my arm. Are we free now? I looked at her reflection in the window. Her eyes bright. Hopeful. Yeah. I said. We are. But inside, the words kept circling. Times. Freedom isn't the absence of family. It's the presence of self. That's what I had been fighting for all along. Letting go of blood wasn't betrayal. It was resurrection. It was finally remembering who I was before they rewrote me. I didn't need revenge anymore. Just Kiet. Just us. For the first time in years. I could breathe without calculating the cost. The house behind me wasn't theirs anymore. It wasn't mine. Either. It was proof. Proof that peace can be built from ashes if you stop apologizing for lighting the match. We drove until the road turned familiar. The skyline fading into soft gold. Sophie pointed ahead. Home, she said, smiling. Yeah, I whispered back. Home. A few weeks later, I opened my old spreadsheet one last time. The same one I used to track every transfer, every favor, every emergency that drained my savings and sanity. It stared back at me, rows of numbers. Color-coded guilt. Green for help. Red for silence. Yellow for lies. I hovered over the file name and smiled. Then I hit delete. The sound was small. Almost nothing. But in that moment, it felt like breathing for the first time. Outside. Sophie was in the yard, painting lavender flowers on the fence of our new house. The brush in her tiny hand moved slow and careful. Every stroke a promise. She turned to me and grinned. Do you think they'll grow? Mom, they already are. I said. The air smelled like fresh paint and rain. There were no calls waiting. No notifications. No guilt pressing behind my ribs. Just quiet. Real quiet. That night, Sophie handed me a drawing, 2 stick figures under a blue roof. A sun with a smiling face above us. She'd written one word at the bottom times hours. I pinned it to the fridge. Next to a grocery list and nothing else. No debts. No demands. Just the simple things that actually mattered. We had cut the cord. And instead of falling, we'd started to bloom. This was never a story about revenge. It was a story about release. If you've ever had to rebuild from someone else's chaos, drop a seed emoji in the comments. How? This one's for you.